distance learners, I hope you guys are doing well. I want to talk about what we're going to be doing today and tomorrow and kind of talk about how you are going to tackle your assignments for today and tomorrow and give you guys some information that will be very helpful for you when you do this. So real quick, let's talk about our goals for today and tomorrow. Our goal for today is to learn about and examine the essential elements of an argumentative essay. So we've done this a little bit in the past. We did this last semester, and I would like to touch on it in practice again because we're going to be adding some new things to our argumentative essays this go around. Our secondary goal will be to draft a high-quality, clear, and evidence-based argumentative essay. We're not going to be drafting the essay today. We're going to be outlining it today, but tomorrow you will be. So this is our secondary goal. Some ways that we can be successful today and when we write our essay are that we need to include an introduction with a clear claim and thesis, concessions that acknowledge and opposing claims, which is one of the new things that we're going to be talking about this go around. The concession rebuts opposing claims. And don't worry, we're going to talk about what all of these things mean. A clear and well-explained claims and reasons, and that means the things or the evidence for how we support, and moving over here a little bit, how we support our argument in our essay, detail and text evidence to support the claims we make, words and phrases and clauses that we use create cohesion, which means that our essay all flows well together and it's clear. We use a formal and academic style, so we're not going to tell a lot of jokes and show necessarily our personalities when we write this essay. It's going to be a formal and academic essay, and we have a conclusion as a paragraph that sums up our argument. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So what is argumentative writing? For those of you who have been here last semester, you know a little bit about this, or you might have heard of it in another class. I do just want to go over this briefly, though, for people who are new. So argumentative and persuasive writing is writing that attempts to convince and persuade with support for claims, clear evidence, and relevant evidence. A lot of the authors write for a variety of reasons. And one of the main reasons the authors write is that they try to persuade or to argue a specific point. So in this case here, that's the purpose of the type of writing that we are going to be practicing. The thing that's new that we're working on this time is something called a concession. A concession is kind of like a written form of the way that you might hear people argue or debate, where they say something along the lines of, well, what it sounds like you're saying is, and then they restate that, and then they might specifically address what the person was saying and explain why that's wrong. That's kind of what a concession is. A concession is not just saying that out loud in a conversation, though. At least in this case, it's actually writing it into our essay. We're going to look at a couple examples here. We're going to look at an example here and some ways that you can start this, though. So don't worry if it sounds a little confusing. One thing I do want to talk about, though, is why we use a concession. I'd love to ask you guys why you think we use a concession, but unfortunately we can't since we're virtual. But a concession, a couple of the reasons why I personally think that it's a helpful thing is because it establishes you as a more qualified or more thoughtful writer. So if you're thinking about the argument from the perspective of all the people who might disagree with you, that shows that you fully understand the situation and topic that you're writing about and that you're fully informed on it. And so therefore increases something called your ethos, which is your credibility or how smart basically of a writer / person you are. Because if you can address and convince the people who disagree with you for the reasons that they disagree with you, it makes you more convincing. If you have questions on that, feel free to let me know. But that's one of the main reasons why a concession or a rebuttal, whichever way you want to call it, is very helpful when we're writing, especially for persuasive writing. So a couple of the ways that we can begin our concessions are on the left here. So your concession might look something like this when it's written out. But blank is not completely inaccurate. So if you were arguing that cell phones should not be allowed to be used while driving, and someone was making the claim that people can still drive very well while texting, you could say something along the lines of, well, that may not be completely inaccurate because a lot of people can do this. However, a majority of people have a difficulty while texting or are impacted negatively in their driving skills while they're texting. And this is displayed by, and then you could pull out evidence or statistics to support that. So that's kind of an example of the way it might start. Some other ways are, it is often argued that, and then you could put in the other person's opinion, and then you could draw attention to something that's true about that person's differing opinion than yours, and you could say opposing views, which means a view that's different than your own, claim, and then you could fill it in there. Once you've established what the specific or other claim is, you want to bring it back to your argument. You don't want to necessarily say, oh, yes, they're so right on that. They're so right on this. That's not persuading them that you're correct. So you want to counter and introduce your argument after you concede or acknowledge their argument. So on this part right here, some ways that you can do that is you could, after you've addressed the other side, you can say nevertheless, and then introduce your claim. Or you could say however, or on the other hand, or but. Those are a few ways to, after addressing their side, bring it back to your argument and continue convincing them. All right. What I'm going to do now is pull up an example of an argumentative essay that hopefully everybody will be able to see. Let me get this. Sorry here, having some technical problems. Okay, so the topic that we're going to be looking at today is the violence in video games. I'm going to read a couple of these paragraphs here, not all of it, just for the sake of time. And I want you guys to follow along with me on this essay. And I'm going to highlight some of the important things that you're going to need to be aware of, because these are things that you're going to need to emulate when you write your own essay. So this one right here, it says, and we'll read this along and I'll draw your attention to important elements. In the world today, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of issues being debated in various places across the globe. One such issue is the debate about whether video games are corrupting our society and our children. Here the author has just introduced the topic of his essay. This is something you will also need to do when you write your own. Over the years, many groups have argued that violent video games have desensitized teens to real-life violence, making them more likely to be involved in fights, school shootings, and other criminal activity. This stance fails to recognize an individual's responsibility for their own behavior and does not acknowledge that most teens are capable of telling the difference between right and wrong and reality and fantasy. Here we have our concession. He acknowledges and states the opinions of someone else who has a different perspective of his own, and then he says why it's wrong and gives specific reasons of why. In this case here, he says that the difference, or teens are capable of telling the difference between right and wrong and something that's fake and something that's real. So he gives specific reasons, and then here he goes on to give an example from a popular video game you may have heard of, Grand Theft Auto, and he uses statistics to back up his claims and example with this game. We're not going to read all of it just for the sake of time. I do want to draw your attention, though, to the way that he forms his, the way that he ends his introductory paragraph. So right here we see his introduction and his thesis. A thesis is very important. A thesis tells your audience what you're going to be arguing and saying in your essay. You've introduced the topic here. Yes, we know you're talking about violence in video games and how they relate, but we don't know your perspective on it 100% yet. So here he finally does that at the end of his conclusion, which is where I would like you to also do it. He says, video games are not corrupting our society, and this can be proven by analyzing the reasons video games are an issue to begin with. Many people believe that video games contain obscene content, cause mental and physical health problems, and lead to violence. Here he says they're not corrupting our society, and this can be proven by the reasons that he's going to explain later in the essay. All right, the first reason. The first reason video games are an issue is that many video games made today possess content that many people would consider to be obscene. So this right here is something called a topic sentence. Just like he introduced the topic near the beginning of his introductory paragraph of the whole essay, he introduces the specific topic that he's going to be discussing in this paragraph here. This is also something I would like you to do in your argumentative essay. He does the same thing in the body paragraph immediately following it. You are going to be writing 2 body paragraphs with topic sentences included. He also includes specific evidence or reasons why he thinks what he does. For example, we'll go down to his second body paragraph. He uses something called an anecdotal evidence, which means something that's described from his own personal experience. He describes his friend Bill. He says that Bill has been playing video games ever since he was 10 years old, and he used to play these games by sitting roughly 3 inches, that's like this much, away from the television screen. He also used to play video games for maybe 6 to 7 hours. That's a long time. Since he played video games in this manner, he developed a severe astigmatism, I can't talk, which is a problem with his eye, in both of his eyes. He now has to wear the thickest glasses I have ever seen just so he can walk around without bumping into everything. This is an example that he uses and pulls from his own life. So not all of your arguments need to be based in statistics or studies, although those are some of the best ways that you can prove your arguments. He does use an example from his own personal life. All right, and then the last thing he does is he writes a brief conclusion paragraph where he sums up the reasons that he stated in his topic sentences and some of the evidence that he used in the middle of his body paragraphs. This is what you guys are going to do in your conclusion paragraph. Notice that his conclusion paragraph is shorter than all of the other 3 paragraphs. That's because the conclusion, the purpose of it is just to sum up and restate the points and reasons that you've already said in your essay. You don't need to spend a lot of time or length on a conclusion. All right, that's an example of what this essay looks like, and this is what I hope to see from you guys. Let me go ahead and pull up your assignment really quick. This is what you're going to work on for today. This assignment, you're going to what you're going to be writing your essay about. Friday, you guys did a discussion about Edgar Allan Poe's poem, Alone. So you're going to find your post that you made in your discussion, in the discussion post on Canvas from Friday. I want you to search through the posts there. Look at the comments, look at what other people have posted, look at what you said, and I want you to find an opinion that is debatable, something that's not necessarily 100% fact. And I want you to find that topic that's something you might be interested in writing about, and that's what you're going to argue a side of in your essay. Once you found your debatable issue, you're going to find an essay, you're going to choose a side of that debatable topic, and then argue that in your essay. If you cannot find something or you're having a hard time with that, here's a topic that you might be able to do. This is the format that you're going to use. You're going to not write the whole essay, you're going to outline it. So you're going to put your claim and thesis, your introduction, and your concession. Remember, we talked about what a concession is. If you can't remember, go back to the beginning of the video. You're going to list your 2 reasons in your 2 separate body paragraphs that you need to write. And then in your conclusion, you're going to sum it up and restate. So don't write the whole essay, but I want you to outline the important details. All of these blanks here are things that you need to fill it in. You can copy and paste this into your text box and add in your own information to it. Copying and pasting this without your own information will not count. Make sure you add your own information to this outline. All right, that should be everything. Tomorrow you're just going to you're going to use this outline that you finished today and turn it into a full written essay like this one that we examined here. If you need questions or if you need help or if you have questions, feel free to let me know. Have a good rest of your day.